Ernst Schulin is the name of a German historian of some eminence. In the year 2000, my sister Margot, my brother Robert, and myself visited him in the University of Freiburg after having spent a memorable 2 weeks in Baden-Baden, in the Black Forest in Germany. And I had heard, for some reason, that Schulin was working on Rathenau. Walter Rathenau, the German industrialist, writer, philosopher, foreign minister, who was assassinated in 1922. Rathenau is a major figure in this story. And Rathenau had a love object, whose name was Lily Deutsch. And Lily Deutsch was née Kahn, and was the daughter of Bernhard Kahn in Mannheim. And Lily Deutsch was an extraordinary personality. And she was married to Felix Deutsch. Felix Deutsch was the man who worked with Rathenau's father, Emil, who was the founder of the AEG, the German hydro electricity monster. Huge corporation. Very powerful. Everybody knew them. And Rathenau is a fascinating figure. And Schulin, the professor whom we visited in Freiburg, was a specialist. He had already written a great deal. He'd written a very large book about Charles V. He's a German historian. And he was working on Rathenau, who a lot of historians were interested in him. And once he got interested in the letters and his life, which is full of puzzles and contradictions, he got interested in Lily, the lady who was his, it's very hard to find the right word for it, and lover is the wrong word because they were never lovers, but his love object. In fact, she said late in life that she had been the only real love interest in his long life. And she knew what she was talking about. Anyhow, there was Schulin, who received us most graciously in his home in Freiburg, and told us that he was very interested in the Kahn family, and that in fact he intended to write a book about them. And I've been in touch with him ever since. Now, in his research on Rathenau, he wanted to find out more about the Kahn family because of Lily. And we saw him in the year 2000, and he began his work, I think, in 1976 or something, some years before we saw him. But he found out that a son of Lily's, George, had gone to England in time before the Nazis. And he thought perhaps if he found him or children or friends or something, he might find some documents about Rathenau, Lily Rathenau. And when he went to England, he found that George had died, but he had a widow. And the widow's name was Julia Ward. Changed the name Deutsch in England, I guess during the war. Didn't sound like that. Nobody wanted to be called Deutsch in England. So he used the maiden name of his mother-in-law, Ward, Julia Ward. And he found that Julia Ward was indeed alive, an elderly lady who lived in Switzerland, in Geneva. So he went to Geneva a lot of ladies, a lot of English people of some wealth prefer to live in Switzerland for tax reasons. It's a tax haven. And so she went to see Julia he went to see Julia in Switzerland and was charmed by her. And no doubt she was charmed by him. And he discovered, to his delight, that she had an immense stack is the word, stock is correct too, of letters and photographs, not addressed to George, but addressed to Paul Kahn. Paul Kahn, Lily's brother, younger brother, Paul Kahn, who was living in Greece of all places. And these letters and photographs belonged to Paul's daughter, whose name was Elsa Moore, M-O-H-R, Elsa Moore. And they were in contact. And he looked at those letters, and he was totally fascinated by Paul. Who was Paul? And those letters were a gold mine. And for any historian of the Kahn family, they were indeed invaluable. And they were addressed to Paul, and I guess there were some letters by Paul too. And the personality and the life of Paul became very, very interesting. So Paul, you see, there were 8 children of Bernhard and Emma Kahn, who were all were born around the late 60s and early 70s of the 19th century. And out of those 8, 3 were great personalities with great strength. And they were Otto H., the multi-billionaire in the United States of America, Lily, the formidable lady, and the love object of Walter Rathenau, and Robert Kahn, the composer, who in many ways was the most amusing of all those Kahns, witty and more amusing is, I guess, the word. The others were not particularly amusing, but they were great personalities. And these were the 3 strong ones. And there were 5 others, of whom Paul is one, who were depressive characters, not so strong. They were all interested and gifted in the arts. But they did not have great careers, and they didn't have the same vitality or creativity as the 3 strong ones. And Paul, in fact, was a very depressive character, and very gifted and mostly interested in literature. And as a young man, he could not decide what he was going to be. He had money, of course, but he didn't know what to do. He studied all kinds of things, finished nothing, never graduated, or read and couldn't decide and didn't know what to do. And all this is in the years before the First World War. And he was interested in Gerhard Hauptmann, the great playwright and Hauptmann, and poet, novelist too, and who was a huge celebrity. And they made friends, and Hauptmann liked Paul and engaged Paul as his secretary in his villa in the Riesengebirge in the mountains. I think they would now be in the Czech Republic, southeast of Berlin. And that he stayed there for, I think, 8 months. He stayed with Hauptmann. But that didn't last. And Hauptmann wanted him to stay, but Paul was restless. And in 1905, when his father died, and then a year later his mother, Bernhard and Emma, died, 1905 and 1906, there was a considerable inheritance. And Paul invested the money in travels. He went to Italy first. He loved Italy. And then he went to Greece, and he loved Greece. And not only did he love Greece, but he met a girl. He met a girl whose name I have great trouble pronouncing, Euphosyme, Euphosyme, Maggot or something. It doesn't matter. Let's call her Eupho. And who was naturally a beautiful girl. And he just fell totally in love with her. And married her. And he wrote to his sister Lily, I'm going to marry that girl. And Lily said, you must be completely crazy. Why would you do a foolish thing like that? Don't do it. Don't do it. In fact, if a girl is very beautiful, suspect the worst. There are people behind her. They're trying to blackmail you. They want to get your money. But he went through with it. And Mrs. Hauptmann wrote him, and she was the only one, he'd said in those letters, who congratulated him properly. And he answered, and that letter is one of those letters. He answered and he said, I'm so delighted that you congratulated. You are the only person who congratulated me. I don't know what is going on here, he said. Either the Greek air made me completely crazy, or it enabled me to see things clearly. In any case, I had a lovely honeymoon. I went to Crete. I left my bride at home. I left the poor thing at home. Das arme Ding. The poor thing, I left her at home. And I had my honeymoon by myself in Crete. Oh, Crete is gorgeous. And he was raving about Crete. And then he returned home. And he lived with Eupho in a little town near Athens. And all this is before the First World War. And Lily continued to be appalled, and so was everybody else, that he would do such a thing. And the girl, Mrs. Paul, was apparently was not interested in any of the things he was interested in, and didn't learn a word of German, of course. And however, there's no reason, there's no indication in those letters that he ever regretted marrying her. And there were 3 daughters, and one of them is Elsa Mohr, M-O-H-R, who was the acquaintance of Julia Ward in Geneva, and Schulin then much later, went to see Elsa Mohr in Greece. And she showed him his books, Paul's books. Paul had an immense library, a terrific library of German classics, French classics, English classics. And he had done nothing. He had done nothing other than read books and translate some plays into Hauptmann plays into Greek, and some other plays too, Schnitzler and others he translated. And there were 1 or 2 instances where his brother-in-law, Felix Deutsch, Lily's husband, tried to find him a job as a representative of the AEG in Greece, but it didn't work out. Later on, after changed, but at first it didn't work out. It didn't work. He was not cut out to do that kind of thing. And then in 1908 or so, he took his lady to Germany for a few months in Munich, but she didn't learn any German, and I guess she didn't feel at home there, and they went back to Greece. And in 1914, First World War, and Paul was an enthusiastic German, of course, and he left his lady at home, and he went to Munich in order to join up. He was 43 by then, in order to join up and serve in the First World War. But something unpleasant happened in Munich. They decided he was too old, they didn't want him, and they rejected him in a manner that injured his pride. He had come all the way from Greece in order to join up, and they sent him packing. And he felt that they were being anti-Semitic when they rejected him. Maybe true. Anyhow, he returned home to Greece. And in 1916, the Greeks joined the Allies and he was deported. He was sent back to Germany. I think he left his lady at home. And then he went to Berlin with the three daughters. And in Berlin after the war, Lily was very good about those girls, about the three daughters. She looked after them like a mother. She looked after them to get a proper education in Germany. And Elsa Moore said she had a terrific time in that big house in Berlin, where she met all kinds of people, including, it appears in those letters, Elsa Moore met the future Pope Pacelli, the future Pope Pius XII. He was a friend of the families. And everybody, of course, they were extremely social and high society, and anybody was invited, especially people in the arts. And so Elsa Moore had a great time. And then when she was old enough, she met a man. She met a man called Alexander Moore, who was a painter, and she married him, and as far as I know, everything went very, very well. Okay, that was Paul in the 20s. And then he went back in 1928 or so, he went back to Greece and to join UFO in Greece. And then there was in the Second World War, in 1943, the Germans occupied the south of Greece. And Paul escaped the mass deportation of Jews, Greek Jews and Jews who lived in Greece. He somehow escaped this, but the German army occupied Greece, and for some reason some soldiers beat him up so that he could not walk anymore. Severe beating. What exactly happened and how, who knows? And he lived for another 4 years. And he died at the age of 78 or something. In Greece, of course. And on his death certificate, it said, Paul Israel Kahn, because Israel, under the Nazis, they had to add, all Jews had to add the name Israel. Nationality unknown.